Jasmine Taylor stands frozen in first class as the flight attendant hovers expectantly. "These seats would be better for this couple," he whispers, nodding toward the white passengers. "Her company acquired this airline yesterday." "Nobody knows." "Not yet." Her finger hovers over her phone screen. "Before we dive into this incredible story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button right now if you've ever witnessed discrimination in public, and subscribe to catch more powerful stories about standing up against injustice." Now let's see how Jasmine handles this situation. Jasmine Taylor wasn't just any passenger on that deluxe air flight from New York to Atlanta. At 42, she had built Horizon Ventures into one of America's fastest-growing tech investment firms. With sharp eyes that missed nothing and a presence that commanded respect without a single word, Jasmine had become a force in an industry that had never expected someone like her to succeed. Born and raised in South Side Chicago, Jasmine grew up watching her mother, Denise, leave before dawn and return after dark, juggling 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Their small apartment might have lacked luxury, but it overflowed with determination and dreams. "Education is the one thing they can never take from you," Denise would tell her daughter night after night, even when exhaustion made her voice tremble. Those words became Jasmine's North Star. While other kids played after school, she studied. When peers surrendered to the low expectations society had placed on them, she defied them. Her exceptional grades earned her a scholarship to Northwestern University, where she was often the only black woman in her advanced business classes. "You must be in the wrong room," a professor had said on her first day, not bothering to check her name against the roster. It was the first of countless times she would be underestimated, overlooked, or flat-out dismissed. "No sir, I'm exactly where I belong," she had answered, taking a seat in the front row. 4 years later, she graduated summa cum laude. 2 years after that, she completed her MBA at Stanford, where the pattern continued. Study groups that mysteriously had no room for her. Internship interviews where recruiters seemed surprised by her articulation, as if eloquence was unexpected from someone with her skin color. "Your resume is impressive, but we're looking for someone who fits our company culture," became a familiar rejection. The unspoken message was clear: you don't look like us, so you don't belong. But Jasmine had learned early that anger, however justified, wouldn't build her future. Instead, she channeled that emotion into fuel. When top investment firms passed her over for less qualified candidates, she didn't just find another job, she created her own destiny. Horizon Ventures began in her studio apartment with nothing but a laptop, her savings, and an unshakable belief in her vision. She focused on investing in overlooked founders, particularly women and people of color whose brilliant ideas were ignored by traditional venture capitalists. Her first big break came when she invested in a healthcare app developed by a team of black female doctors. When that company sold for $30 million 3 years later, Jasmine's reputation for spotting diamond-in-the-rough opportunities was established. Success followed success, and Horizon Ventures grew from a one-woman operation to a powerhouse with offices in New York, San Francisco, and Chicago. Through it all, one person remained constant: Darius Washington. He'd been the first person she hired, a sharp Howard University graduate who shared her vision and work ethic. From executive assistant, he rose to become her chief operating officer and trusted confidant. They had weathered every storm together, building an unspoken language of trust. "You know they'll call you ruthless," Darius had warned when she made her first tough decision to fire an underperforming executive who happened to be white. "They'd call me worse if I were a failure," she had replied. "I'd rather be respected than liked." That philosophy guided her through 15 years of building her empire. She learned that in business, especially as a black woman, showing weakness invited exploitation. She became known for her brilliance, her fairness, and her unwillingness to tolerate mediocrity or prejudice. Her employees knew she would fight for them fiercely, but expected excellence in return. Today's flight was a rare personal trip. Her mother's 70th birthday celebration in Atlanta had been planned for months, and despite the monumental acquisition her company had just completed, Jasmine refused to miss it. This would be the first time in years she'd take a weekend completely off from work. Or so she had planned. As she settled into her first-class seat on the deluxe air flight, she allowed herself a small smile. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was flying on an airline her company had secretly purchased just yesterday. The acquisition had been kept quiet, with plans to announce it next week after all the paperwork cleared. Nobody on this flight, not the crew, not the other passengers, had any idea that they were now, essentially, working for her. She opened her laptop to review some final documents about the acquisition. Deluxe Air had been struggling financially for years, but Jasmine saw potential. With the right leadership and cultural overhaul, it could become something special. Her vision wasn't just about profits, it was about creating an airline that treated everyone with dignity, regardless of their appearance or background. As other passengers boarded, Jasmine observed them with quiet interest. The businessman too engrossed in his phone to acknowledge the flight attendant. The elderly woman who seemed nervous about flying. The young family trying to keep their children quiet. Human stories, all intersecting briefly in this metal tube hurling through the sky. Little did she know that her own story was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would test everything she stood for and believed in. As she closed her laptop and took a sip of the pre-flight water offered to first-class passengers, Jasmine had no idea that in less than 30 minutes, she would make a decision that would change not just her day, but the entire trajectory of Deluxe Air. Bradley Parker had been a flight attendant with Deluxe Air for 15 years. At 53, his once black hair had faded to salt and pepper, and the constant smile he wore had etched permanent lines around his mouth. He took pride in knowing the right kind of passengers who belonged in first class and prided himself on maintaining what he considered the proper atmosphere in the premium cabin. When he saw Jasmine sitting in 2A, something about her presence triggered an unconscious bias he would never acknowledge. Despite her impeccable Armani suit, designer briefcase, and composed demeanor, Bradley didn't see a CEO. He saw someone who, in his mind, seemed out of place. The catalyst arrived 10 minutes before departure. The Wilsons, Robert and Patricia, hurried onto the plane, their faces flushed with the entitlement of people unaccustomed to waiting. Both in their 50s, they radiated affluence, from Robert's custom-tailored suit to Patricia's diamond earrings that caught the cabin light. "I specifically booked seats together," Robert complained loudly to Bradley. "This is unacceptable." Bradley checked their boarding passes, noting they had indeed been assigned seats 5A and 8C, separated by several rows. The flight was full, and seat reassignments would be difficult. He scanned the cabin, his eyes landing on Jasmine, who was quietly reading through documents. "Let me see what I can do for you," Bradley assured them with a conspiratorial smile. He approached Jasmine, his posture and tone shifting subtly. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "There seems to be a seating issue. These important passengers need to sit together." He gestured toward the Wilsons, who stood expectantly in the aisle. "There's a perfectly good seat in economy that I can move you to." Jasmine looked up slowly, her expression neutral. "I'm comfortable right here, thank you. I booked this seat specifically." Bradley's smile tightened. "Perhaps you're confused about your booking. Can I see your boarding pass again?" "You checked it when I boarded," Jasmine replied calmly. "Seat 2A is mine." Bradley's voice dropped to a whisper, though still audible to those nearby. "These arrangements would really be better for passengers who are used to first class. I'm sure you understand." The implication hung in the air, sharp and unmistakable. Several nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one spoke up. The silence became its own form of complicity. Jasmine felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced countless times throughout her life when confronted with the casual cruelty of prejudice. The calculation began in her mind: speak up and risk being labeled an angry black woman, or silently accept the humiliation to avoid creating a scene. She had worked too hard and come too far to surrender her dignity. "I understand perfectly what you're implying," she said, her voice steady but firm. And my answer is no. I paid for this seat, I'm sitting in this seat. Bradley's friendly facade faltered. Ma'am, as a flight attendant, I have authority over cabin arrangements for balance and safety reasons. Safety reasons? Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Please explain how moving me specifically, rather than any other passenger, addresses a safety concern. The confrontation was escalating, drawing more attention. From across the aisle, a man in his 30s, Michael Akinola, had begun recording discreetly with his phone. His Nigerian heritage gave him an instant understanding of what was happening. Is there a problem here? Michael asked, his deep voice carrying an unmistakable note of authority. His crisp suit and confident demeanor marked him as a professional, possibly a lawyer. Bradley turned, irritation flashing across his face. This doesn't concern you, sir. Actually, Michael replied, when I witness potential discrimination on a commercial carrier, it does concern me. I believe this lady has a valid ticket for her seat. The word discrimination hung in the air like a thunderclap. Bradley's face flushed red. I'm simply trying to accommodate loyal customers, he insisted, gesturing again to the Wilsons, who now looked uncomfortable with the growing tension. And I am a customer with a valid ticket, Jasmine stated, each word precisely measured. Unless you can provide a legitimate reason beyond your personal preference, I will remain in my assigned seat. The standoff might have ended there, but Bradley, perhaps realizing he was losing control of the situation, and with it, his authority, made a critical error. If you continue to be difficult, I'll have to involve the captain and security. We have protocols for passengers who disrupt the cabin environment. The thinly veiled threat was the final straw. Jasmine straightened in her seat, her professional mask firmly in place though her heart raced with a familiar anger. Please do involve your captain, she said. I would be very interested to hear his perspective on why I'm being asked to move when my ticket clearly assigns me this seat. Bradley stormed off toward the cockpit, murmuring about difficult passengers just loudly enough to be heard. In the momentary lull, Patricia Wilson leaned toward her husband. Maybe we should just take our assigned seats. This is getting out of hand. Nonsense, Robert replied, though his confidence seemed to be wavering. We paid good money for these tickets. So did I, Jasmine said, having overheard them. Her gaze held such quiet dignity that Patricia looked away first. Michael Akinola stood and approached Jasmine's seat. I don't mean to intrude, but I'm recording this interaction. I'm an attorney, and what's happening here is textbook discriminatory treatment. Thank you, Jasmine replied simply. In any other circumstance, she might have handled this differently, might have revealed her position or pulled strings. But something deeper was at stake now. This wasn't just about her seat on this flight, it was about every person who had ever been made to feel less than because of the color of their skin. The cockpit door opened, and Captain Thomas Reynolds emerged. Tall, with graying temples and the confident bearing of a man accustomed to authority, he surveyed the cabin before approaching Jasmine's seat. I understand there's a situation, he said, his tone professional but with an unmistakable edge. He had already decided who the problem was before hearing a single word. Yes, Jasmine replied. Your flight attendant has asked me to give up my ticketed first-class seat for another couple, with no valid reason provided. When I refused, he threatened me with security. Captain Reynolds frowned. Ma'am, my crew has final authority over seating arrangements. If they've determined. Based on what criteria? Michael interrupted. Because from where I'm standing, the only apparent difference between this passenger and the ones your crew wants to accommodate is the color of their skin. The captain's expression hardened. Sir, I suggest you return to your seat. We don't tolerate interference with crew instructions. More phones had emerged from other passengers, recording the escalating situation. The Wilsons looked increasingly uncomfortable, caught in a drama they hadn't anticipated when demanding better seats. Jasmine realized this moment had transcended a simple seating dispute. It had become a public referendum on whether someone who looked like her deserved the same respect and accommodation as someone who looked like the Wilsons. With perfect composure, she gathered her belongings. "I'll make this easy for everyone," she said, standing. "I'll voluntarily leave the aircraft." Captain Reynolds seemed relieved. "That's a wise decision, ma'am." "Is it?" Jasmine asked, her gaze steady. "We'll see." As she moved toward the exit, she made a brief call. "Darius? It's time to activate protocol accountability." She listened for a moment. "Yes, immediately." The cryptic message meant nothing to the crew or other passengers, but as Jasmine walked down the jet bridge with her head held high, the slight smile that touched her lips might have given them pause. Behind her, a flight attendant rushed to accommodate the Wilsons in their rightful places. No one noticed that as the aircraft door closed, Jasmine hadn't walked toward the terminal exit, but rather toward the airline's administrative offices. The storm was just beginning. Captain Thomas Reynolds returned to the cockpit feeling uneasy despite having resolved the disruption. Something about the calm way the woman had left, that cryptic phone call, it pricked at his conscience in a way he couldn't quite dismiss. "Problem solved?" First Officer James Patel asked as Reynolds settled back into his seat. "Passenger voluntarily deplaned," Reynolds answered, running through the pre-flight checklist with practiced efficiency. "Let's get this bird in the air." But as they requested pushback clearance, the ground controller's response was unexpected. "Deluxe Air 427, stand by for further instructions. We have an administrative hold on your departure." Reynolds frowned, keying his mic again. "Ground, Deluxe Air 427, confirm administrative hold. What's the nature of the delay?" "Stand by, Deluxe Air 427. Inside the terminal, Jasmine Taylor stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the tarmac, watching the aircraft that had just ejected her sit motionless at the gate. Her phone was pressed to her ear. "Are you sure about this, Jasmine?" Darius Washington's voice carried the weight of concern. "We could handle this privately, after the acquisition announcement." "No," Jasmine said firmly. "This isn't about me being embarrassed or inconvenienced. This is about a culture that needs immediate correction." She thought back to all the moments in her life when she'd been underestimated, dismissed, or outright discriminated against. The college admissions officer who had assumed she was there for a sports scholarship rather than academic merit. The bank loan officer who had insisted on speaking to her, husband or father, about her business loan application. The countless times she'd been followed by security in high-end stores despite wearing designer clothes. Each time, she had swallowed her anger, channeled it into productivity, focused on the long game. But standing in the airport terminal now, as the new owner of an airline where she had just been humiliated, Jasmine realized the long game had led to this precise moment. She finally had the power to do more than just personally overcome discrimination, she could actually change the system. "Implement full protocol accountability," she instructed Darius. "And get me Zoe Bennett on the line." As if summoned by her words, a security official approached, accompanied by a woman in her late 30s wearing a Deluxe Air executive uniform. Zoe Bennett, VP of Operations, had no idea she was about to meet her new boss under the most awkward circumstances imaginable. "Ms. Taylor?" Zoe extended her hand, her expression professionally concerned. "I'm Zoe Bennett. We received an urgent alert about an incident on Flight 427. If you could come with me to discuss what happened." Jasmine's measured smile revealed nothing. "Of course, Ms. Bennett. I think we have quite a lot to discuss." Meanwhile, on the plane, tension was mounting. 20 minutes had passed since their scheduled departure time, and no explanation had been provided to the increasingly restless passengers. Bradley Parker paced the aisle, avoiding the accusatory stares from several passengers who had witnessed his treatment of Jasmine. Michael Akinola sat calmly, his phone still recording, catching Bradley's nervous glances. "This is ridiculous," Robert Wilson complained loudly. "First that woman makes a scene, and now we're delayed. I have important meetings in Atlanta. From several rows back, a voice responded. The only person who made a scene was the flight attendant who tried to move her because of her race. The cabin fell silent. The unspoken truth had been voiced. Captain Reynolds' voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We're experiencing some administrative issues. We hope to have more information shortly. In the cockpit, Reynolds was growing increasingly concerned as he received cryptic messages from dispatch. Flight 427, please prepare to return to gate. Stand by for further instructions. What the hell is going on? He muttered to his first officer. Tom, Patel said quietly, that woman who left, did you get her name? No, why would I? Bradley said she was being difficult about a seat reassignment. Because I just got a text from my buddy in dispatch. There's some kind of executive intervention happening with our flight. Something about a VIP who was on board. Reynolds felt the first twinge of real alarm. Check the manifest. Who was in 2A? Patel pulled up the passenger list, his eyes widening as he read the name. Jasmine Taylor. He looked up at Reynolds. Why does that name sound familiar? Before Reynolds could answer, the radio crackled again. Deluxe Air 427, return to gate immediately. Priority order from executive management. As the aircraft began its slow push back to the terminal, Michael Akinola received a text message. He read it, a slow smile spreading across his face. He leaned across the aisle to an elderly black woman who had also been watching the earlier confrontation with dismay. Ms. Harriet, he whispered, I think you're going to want to stick around for what happens next. Sometimes justice comes when you least expect it. At the gate, a small delegation had formed. Zoe Bennett stood ramrod straight, her face pale. Beside her was a stern-looking man in a business suit, Anthony Grantham, Deluxe Air's chief legal officer, hastily summoned from a day off. And in the center, radiating calm authority, stood Jasmine Taylor. As the jet bridge reconnected to the aircraft, Captain Reynolds received the most surreal instruction of his 20-year flying career. Captain, please instruct all crew members to deplane immediately for an emergency briefing. Passengers are to remain on board temporarily. Reynolds exchanged a confused glance with Patel. This is unprecedented. So was discriminating against the new owner of the airline, Patel replied quietly, the pieces finally clicking into place. When Bradley Parker emerged from the aircraft, his confident stride faltered at the sight of Jasmine standing between two executives. The blood drained from his face as terrible understanding dawned. Mr. Parker, Zoe Bennett said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion, Captain Reynolds. Please follow us immediately. As they walked toward a private conference room, Bradley attempted damage control. Ma'am, if there was some misunderstanding on the aircraft. We'll discuss it shortly, Jasmine interrupted, her voice neutral. Every second we delay is another second your passengers sit confused and uncomfortable. Something I recently experienced firsthand. In the conference room, Anthony Grantham closed the door and turned to the bewildered crew members. Before we begin, he said gravely, you should know that as of yesterday afternoon, Deluxe Air is under new ownership. Horizon Ventures has acquired a controlling interest in the airline. He gestured to Jasmine. This is Jasmine Taylor, CEO of Horizon Ventures and now the majority owner of Deluxe Air. The silence that followed was absolute. Captain Reynolds seemed to physically shrink in his chair. Bradley Parker's mouth opened and closed without sound. Now, Jasmine said, leaning forward, let's discuss what happened on Flight 427, and why I believe it represents everything that needs to change about this airline's culture. In a secluded airport executive lounge, Jasmine Taylor sat across from Darius Washington, her trusted COO. The plush chairs and ambient lighting created an atmosphere of calm that belied the storm they were orchestrating. Everything is in motion, Darius confirmed, sliding a tablet across the table. The board chairman nearly had a heart attack when I told him what happened. He's giving you full authority to handle this however you see fit. Jasmine nodded, studying the real-time data streaming across the screen. Have we confirmed that no one leaked the acquisition news yet? Absolutely airtight, Darius assured her. The press release was scheduled for Monday. Not even most of Deluxair's executives know yet. Only the board and top 3 officers signed the papers yesterday. Jasmine allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Sometimes timing is everything, Darius. The acquisition had been months in the making. Deluxair, once an industry leader, had fallen on hard times due to mismanagement and a corporate culture that prioritized cutting costs over customer experience. Their stock had plummeted after several viral incidents involving poor customer service, creating the perfect opportunity for Horizon Ventures to step in with a rescue package that gave Jasmine controlling interest. What no one had anticipated, least of all Jasmine herself, was that her first direct experience with the airline would so perfectly exemplify everything that needed changing. "Walk me through protocol accountability again," she requested, though she knew the plan by heart. It was a contingency they had developed for worst-case scenarios, never truly expecting to implement it on day one. Darius pulled up a flowchart on his tablet. "We've temporarily frozen all Deluxair's systems for emergency review. Their entire fleet is grounded for what the public will be told is a routine safety inspection. Meanwhile, we're expediting the paperwork to install our transition team effective immediately rather than next month. And Flight 427 specifically is being handled with special attention," Darius confirmed with a hint of satisfaction. "I've informed Zoe Bennett that there's an urgent situation requiring her personal oversight, without specifying details. She should be arriving at the administrative offices any moment." As if on cue, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a notification. "She's here. Time to set things in motion." Have you ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you, only to regret it later? Type 1 in the comments if you've experienced discrimination and found a way to stand your ground. Hit that like button if you believe in karma, and subscribe to hear more stories about powerful comebacks against injustice. What do you think will happen when Bradley and Captain Reynolds discover who Jasmine really is? Let's continue with the story. Meanwhile, inside the aircraft, confusion had given way to frustration among the passengers. The Wilsons, now seated comfortably in first class, seemed particularly agitated. "This is outrageous," Robert Wilson complained loudly. "First that woman causes a scene, and now we're stuck here with no explanation." Michael Akinola, still recording key moments on his phone, raised an eyebrow. "Interesting perspective, sir. From where I was sitting, she didn't cause any scene at all. She simply declined to give up the seat she paid for." Several passengers nodded in agreement, creating a ripple of murmurs throughout the cabin. The solidarity was small but significant, a crack in the usual bystander silence that allows discrimination to flourish. Patricia Wilson shifted uncomfortably in her seat, Jasmine's former seat. "Robert, perhaps we should have just taken our assigned places." "Nonsense," her husband replied, though with less conviction than before. "The flight attendant offered us these seats. It's not our fault if there was a misunderstanding." The word misunderstanding hung in the air, its inadequacy obvious to everyone who had witnessed what really happened. In the operations center, Zoe Bennett was experiencing a very different kind of confusion. A consummate professional who had worked her way up through the ranks over 15 years, she prided herself on knowing every aspect of Deluxair's operations. Yet suddenly, inexplicable orders were flooding in from executive management, a level that typically left day-to-day operations to her team. "I don't understand," she told her staff. "Why are we grounding the entire fleet for inspection? This isn't protocol." Her assistant, Trevor, looked equally bewildered. The orders came directly from the board level, authenticated with executive codes. And there's more, they want all flights reviewed for cultural compliance issues, whatever that means. Before Zoe could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed the board chairman's private line, something that had happened exactly twice in her entire career with Deluxe Air. "Sir," she answered, trying to keep the alarm from her voice. "We're implementing the fleet grounding, but I don't understand." "Bennett," the chairman interrupted, his voice strained. "Listen carefully. There's been a significant change in leadership. As of yesterday, Horizon Ventures has acquired controlling interest in Deluxe Air." Zoe nearly dropped her phone. Acquired? But there was no announcement, no preparation. The announcement was scheduled for Monday. Events have accelerated the timeline. He hesitated. The CEO of Horizon Ventures, Jasmine Taylor, was on Flight 427 today. There was an incident. She's currently in the executive conference room and has requested your presence immediately. The pieces began falling into place with horrifying clarity. "What kind of incident, sir?" "The kind that makes me wish I'd retired last year," the chairman replied grimly. "Get to that conference room now, Bennett. And pray that she's in a forgiving mood, because right now, the future of this airline depends on it." As Zoe hurried through the terminal, her mind raced. Jasmine Taylor was a legend in business circles, known for her brilliant strategic mind and for transforming struggling companies into industry leaders. She was also known for having zero tolerance for discrimination or incompetence. If something had happened to Ms. Taylor on a Deluxe Air flight, and she now controlled the company. Zoe quickened her pace, dread and determination mingling in equal measure. Outside the airport windows, Jasmine could see Flight 427 sitting immobilized on the tarmac. There was something poetically just about the scene, the aircraft gleaming in the afternoon sun, seemingly perfect, yet unable to function due to deep, systemic problems invisible from the outside. It reminded her of so many corporate cultures she had transformed over the years. Shiny veneers hiding toxic environments. Executive suites filled with people who looked the same, thought the same, and perpetuated the same problems while expecting different results. "Ms. Taylor?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. Zoe Bennett had arrived, slightly breathless from her hurried journey across the terminal. "I'm Zoe Bennett, VP of Operations. I was told there's an urgent situation." Jasmine turned, assessing the woman before her. Bennett's reputation within Deluxe Air was stellar, efficient, fair, and one of the few women in upper management. Her personnel file had indicated she'd fought for more inclusive hiring practices, often against resistance from old guard executives. "Ms. Bennett," Jasmine nodded. "Thank you for coming so quickly. I believe we have a situation that perfectly encapsulates why I decided to acquire this airline. Would you join me?" As they walked toward the conference room where Bradley and Captain Reynolds waited, Jasmine explained briefly what had occurred. Zoe's expression shifted from shock to anger to determination. "Ms. Taylor, I am deeply sorry this happened to you. This behavior goes against everything I've tried to instill in our operations team." "I believe you," Jasmine replied. "Which is why you're going to play a crucial role in what happens next." They paused outside the conference room door. "What exactly are we doing here?" Zoe asked quietly. Jasmine's expression was resolute. "We're not just addressing one incident, Ms. Bennett. We're setting the tone for an entire corporate transformation. The question is, are you ready to be part of it?" Zoe straightened her shoulders, her decision made. "Absolutely, Ms. Taylor." "Good," Jasmine nodded. "Then let's begin." Inside the room, Bradley Parker and Captain Reynolds sat in uncomfortable silence, exchanging occasional glances but finding no words to express the gravity of their situation. When the door opened to admit Jasmine and Zoe, both men stood abruptly. "Ms. Taylor," Anthony Grantham began, "I've informed Captain Reynolds and Mr. Parker of the change in ownership and the general nature of this meeting." "Excellent," Jasmine replied, taking her seat at the head of the table. "Then let's not waste time. Mr. Parker, I'd like you to explain, in your own words, why you asked me to give up my seat for the Wilsons." Bradley's face had lost all color. "Ms. Taylor, I deeply regret any misunderstanding. That wasn't my question, Jasmine interrupted calmly. I asked for your reasoning at the time, not your retrospective regret now that you know who I am. The silence stretched as Bradley struggled for words that wouldn't further incriminate him. The Wilsons are frequent flyers with our airline, he finally managed. They requested to sit together, and I was trying to accommodate them. By moving me specifically, rather than asking any other passenger. Captain Reynolds cleared his throat. If I may, Ms. Taylor, in situations like this, crew members have discretion to select passengers for reseating based on what criteria, exactly? Jasmine turned her gaze to him. Is there a written policy that guided Mr. Parker's decision to approach me first? Perhaps you could point to that section in your operations manual. More silence. The truth, Jasmine continued, is that Mr. Parker made assumptions based on my appearance. He decided I didn't look like I belonged in first class, despite my ticket, despite my business attire, despite every objective measure that should have mattered. She turned to Zoe. Ms. Bennett, as VP of Operations, would you say this incident reflects Deluxair's values? Zoe didn't hesitate. No, Ms. Taylor, it absolutely does not. But I would be lying if I said it was entirely isolated. We've had incidents before. Yes, I know, Jasmine nodded. In fact, they were a factor in my decision to acquire this airline. Deluxair has potential, but its culture needs a complete overhaul. Today's incident simply confirms the urgency of that change. She looked each person in the room in the eye before continuing. Here's what happens next. Flight 427 is cancelled, effective immediately. All passengers will receive full refunds, vouchers for future travel, and premium accommodations until they can be rebooked. Mr. Parker is suspended pending a full investigation. Captain Reynolds will participate in comprehensive bias training before returning to duty. She turned back to Zoe. Ms. Bennett, I'd like you to personally address the passengers on Flight 427. Explain that the flight is cancelled due to a cultural compliance issue that the new ownership takes extremely seriously. And the Wilsons? Anthony Grantham asked. Jasmine's expression remained neutral. They'll receive the same accommodations as everyone else. This isn't about punishment, it's about setting a new standard. She stood, signaling the meeting was nearly over. One last thing. Effective immediately, Deluxair will begin a comprehensive cultural transformation. This incident isn't just about one flight attendant or one captain. It's about systems that enable bias to affect decision-making. Her gaze landed on Bradley, who couldn't meet her eyes. Mr. Parker, your actions today weren't isolated. They were the product of a culture that tacitly permits certain passengers to be treated differently based on how they look. That changes today. As they filed out of the room, Captain Reynolds hung back. Ms. Taylor, he said quietly, I want to apologize personally. I should have questioned the situation more thoroughly instead of assuming. Yes, you should have, Jasmine agreed. But apologies mean little without action, Captain. I'll be watching to see what you do next, not what you say now. As Jasmine walked toward the gate where Flight 427's passengers still waited, unaware of the seismic shift that had just occurred in the airline's leadership, she felt a strange sense of purpose. What had begun as a humiliating incident had transformed into an opportunity for meaningful change, not just for her, but for every passenger who had ever been judged by their appearance rather than their ticket. The real work was just beginning. Inside the aircraft, the atmosphere had deteriorated from confusion to outright frustration. 90 minutes had passed since their scheduled departure time, and the lack of clear information had passengers shifting restlessly in their seats. This is completely unacceptable, Robert Wilson declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. I'm going to write a letter to the airline executives about this treatment. The irony of his complaint was not lost on Michael Akinola, who had continued documenting key moments of the unfolding drama. Perhaps, he suggested with deliberate calm, you could mention the treatment of other passengers in your letter as well. Several nearby passengers nodded in agreement, the collective awareness of what had transpired with Jasmine Taylor creating an unusual solidarity among strangers. Bradley Parker had not returned to the aircraft after being summoned off, leaving the remaining flight attendants to handle increasingly pointed questions from passengers. "I'm sorry, but we don't have any updates beyond what the captain has shared," Lisa Chen, the senior flight attendant, explained for the dozenth time. Her professional smile was beginning to strain under the pressure. In the cockpit, First Officer James Patel watched as Captain Reynolds returned, his face ashen. "What happened?" Patel asked. Reynolds sank into his seat. "Everything's changed, James. That woman, the one Bradley had removed, she's Jasmine Taylor." "The Jasmine Taylor? The investment mogul?" "The same," Reynolds confirmed. "And as of yesterday, she's our boss. Horizon Ventures has acquired Deluxe Air." Patel let out a low whistle. "So when Bradley asked her to move, he was discriminating against the owner of the airline," Reynolds finished. "We're grounded. The flight's cancelled. And I'm suspended until I complete bias training." Before Patel could respond, the radio crackled. "Deluxe Air 427, please prepare for passenger deplaning. Executive management will address the cabin first." Reynolds picked up the cabin intercom with a shaking hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We apologize for the continued delay. We've been instructed to return to the gate where a representative from airline management will address the situation. Please remain seated until further notice." As the announcement concluded, murmurs of displeasure rippled through the cabin. "This is outrageous," Patricia Wilson whispered to her husband. "We're going to miss our dinner reservation at Le Cirque." From across the aisle, the elderly black woman whom Michael had spoken to earlier, Harriet Johnson, a retired history professor, fixed Patricia with a level gaze. "Some of us have missed much more important things in life due to circumstances beyond our control, dear." The gentle rebuke carried such dignity that Patricia fell silent, suddenly very interested in her manicure. At the gate, Zoe Bennett stood with Jasmine Taylor and Darius Washington, preparing to board the aircraft. Airport staff had hastily assembled a team to handle the logistics of accommodating and rebooking an entire flight's worth of passengers. "Are you sure you want to do this personally?" Darius asked Jasmine quietly. "We could handle it through official channels." "Some messages need to be delivered in person," Jasmine replied. "Besides, I want to see their faces when they realize what happened." Zoe nodded in agreement. "It sends a powerful signal about the kind of leadership they can expect going forward." As they walked down the jet bridge, Jasmine felt a curious sense of déjà vu, returning to the very aircraft she had been forced to leave less than 2 hours ago, but under dramatically different circumstances. The cabin fell silent as they entered. Captain Reynolds stood near the cockpit door, his posture rigid with tension. The remaining flight attendants looked confused but snapped to attention at the sight of Zoe Bennett, recognizing their VP of operations. "Good afternoon, everyone," Zoe began, her voice carrying confidently through the cabin. "I'm Zoe Bennett, Vice President of Operations for Deluxe Air. I'm here to address the delay you've been experiencing and to share some important information." She gestured to Jasmine. "This is Ms. Jasmine Taylor, CEO of Horizon Ventures, which as of yesterday is the majority owner of Deluxe Air." A ripple of surprise moved through the cabin. Recognition dawned on some faces. Jasmine's success and profile in the business world made her recognizable to many. But the full implications weren't immediately clear to most passengers. "Some of you," Zoe continued, "may have witnessed an incident earlier where Ms. Taylor was asked to give up her seat in first class. What you witnessed was unacceptable discrimination, and it has brought to light serious cultural issues within our airline that require immediate attention." Now understanding bloomed across the cabin. Gasps and murmurs spread as passengers connected the dots. The Wilsons shrank visibly in their seats, the horrifying realization of their role in this drama dawning on them. As a result, Zoe announced, Flight 427 is cancelled effective immediately. All passengers will receive full refunds, vouchers for future travel, and premium accommodations until we can rebook you on alternate flights. More murmurs, but surprisingly few complaints. The extraordinary circumstances seem to have dampened the usual outrage that accompanies flight cancellations. Jasmine stepped forward. I want to personally apologize for the inconvenience this causes each of you. However, I believe that addressing institutional problems head-on, even when difficult, ultimately leads to better experiences for everyone. Her gaze swept the cabin, pausing briefly on the Wilsons, who couldn't meet her eyes, and then warming as she spotted Michael Akinola and Harriet Johnson, who had shown support during the earlier confrontation. Deluxe Air is entering a new era, she continued. One where every passenger is treated with equal dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance. What happened today was a symptom of a deeper problem, one that we are committed to solving. I hope you'll give us the opportunity to earn your trust in the future. The sincerity in her voice resonated with many passengers, who responded with nods and even scattered applause. Others remained skeptical, arms crossed, perhaps wondering if this was merely damage control rather than genuine commitment to change. Airport staff are waiting at the gate to assist with accommodations and rebooking, Zoe concluded. Please gather your belongings and proceed to the terminal in an orderly fashion. Thank you for your patience and understanding. As passengers began collecting their items, Michael Akinola approached Jasmine. Ms. Taylor, he said, extending his hand. Michael Akinola, civil rights attorney. What I witnessed today was textbook discrimination, and your response has been extraordinary. If you need any assistance with the structural changes you're planning, my firm would be honored to consult. Jasmine shook his hand firmly. Mr. Akinola. Your support earlier was appreciated. I may take you up on that offer. Harriet Johnson approached next, her eyes bright with emotion. Young lady, she said, taking Jasmine's hands in hers, I've been flying for 60 years, and I've seen this kind of thing happen countless times with no consequences. What you did today matters beyond this flight. Jasmine squeezed the older woman's hands gently. Thank you, ma'am. That means a great deal. As passengers filed past, reactions varied widely. Some offered words of support or shared their own experiences with discrimination. Others averted their eyes, perhaps uncomfortable with confronting the ugly reality that had been exposed. The Wilsons were among the last to leave, clearly hoping to avoid direct contact with Jasmine. But as they reached the exit, Robert Wilson paused. Ms. Taylor, he began awkwardly, I want to apologize. We didn't intend. Intent isn't always relevant, Mr. Wilson, Jasmine interrupted calmly. Impact is what matters. I hope this experience has been educational for you. Patricia tugged at her husband's sleeve, eager to escape the uncomfortable encounter, and they hurried down the jet bridge. When the last passenger had deplaned, Jasmine turned to Zoe. Now the real work begins. What's next? Zoe asked. A private conversation with the entire flight crew, Jasmine replied. And then a company-wide announcement that will make it very clear, the old Deluxe Air is gone. A new era begins today. As they walked toward the cockpit where Captain Reynolds waited, Jasmine felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The humiliation she had experienced hours earlier had been transformed into something powerful, a catalyst for change that would affect thousands of employees and millions of passengers. Sometimes, she reflected, justice arrives in unexpected packages. Today, it had come in the form of a first-class seat that she had refused to surrender, and an airline that would never be the same again. The Deluxe Air Executive Lounge had been hastily converted into a meeting space. The plush leather chairs normally reserved for premium passengers now seated a somber group. Captain Thomas Reynolds, First Officer James Patel, the flight attendants from Flight 427, and Bradley Parker, who sat slightly apart, his career hanging by a thread. Jasmine Taylor stood before them, her presence commanding despite her 5'6" frame. Beside her, Zoe Bennett and Darius Washington flanked her like generals preparing for a campaign. "Before we begin," Jasmine said, her voice measured and clear, "I want to make something absolutely clear. This meeting is not about public relations or damage control. It's not even primarily about what happened to me today." She let her gaze move from face to face. "This is about a systemic problem that affects how people are treated based on their appearance. It's about unconscious bias becoming conscious action. And it's about how we, all of us in this room, respond to that reality." Bradley Parker stared at the floor, unable to meet her eyes. Captain Reynolds maintained a rigid posture, his jaw tight. The other crew members showed varying degrees of discomfort and concern. "Ms. Bennett," Jasmine nodded to Zoe, "would you please share what you found in your preliminary review?" Zoe stepped forward, tablet in hand. "In the past year alone, Deluxe Air has received 37 formal complaints alleging racial discrimination from passengers. Only 3 resulted in any disciplinary action or policy change. 11 were dismissed without investigation. The others received form letter responses with flight vouchers." Murmurs rippled through the assembled crew. "This isn't about one incident," Zoe continued, her professionalism tinged with disappointment. "It's about a pattern that we've systematically failed to address." Jasmine nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Bennett." She turned back to the group. "Effective immediately, Deluxe Air will implement comprehensive changes to address these issues. Mr. Washington will outline our initial steps." Darius stepped forward. "First, all flights are grounded for 24 hours for a company-wide reset. All employees will participate in preliminary bias recognition training before returning to duty. Second, we're establishing a new executive vice president position for diversity, equity, and inclusion with direct reporting to Ms. Taylor. Third, we're creating anonymous reporting channels for both employees and passengers to flag concerns without fear of retaliation." As Darius continued outlining the sweeping changes, Bradley Parker finally found his voice. "Will I be terminated?" he asked quietly, interrupting Darius. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Jasmine. "That depends on you, Mr. Parker," she replied after a thoughtful pause. "I believe in accountability, not just punishment. You have 2 options: immediate termination with standard severance, or participation in an intensive restorative justice program while on unpaid leave, with the possibility, not guarantee, of reinstatement in a different role after successful completion." Bradley looked up, surprise evident on his face. "You'd give me a second chance?" "This isn't about you, or me," Jasmine emphasized. "It's about creating lasting change. Sometimes, transformed critics become the most effective advocates. The question is whether you're willing to do the difficult work of confronting your own biases and then helping others do the same." Captain Reynolds cleared his throat. "Ms. Taylor, if I may. I failed today as well. I made assumptions without full information. I'd like to be part of the solution going forward." Jasmine studied him for a moment. "I appreciate that, Captain. You'll have that opportunity." She addressed the entire group again. "I want to be clear, I don't expect perfection. I expect awareness, accountability, and improvement. The culture of an organization starts at the top but lives in everyday interactions, how we treat each other and those we serve." The door to the lounge opened, and Anthony Grantham, the legal officer, entered with 2 unexpected guests, Michael Akinola and Harriet Johnson. "Ms. Taylor," Grantham began, "Mr. Akinola has made a suggestion that I think has merit, with your approval." Michael stepped forward. "Ms. Taylor, Professor Johnson and I have discussed the situation, and we believe passenger testimony could be valuable to your training programs. With your permission, we'd like to share our experiences, not just from today, but from decades of flying while black." Harriet nodded in agreement. "Young man, I've been flying since the civil rights era. The stories I could tell would open some eyes." Jasmine smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her professional demeanor. "Professor Johnson, that would be invaluable. Mr. Akinola, thank you for the suggestion. She turned back to the assembled crew. This is what accountability looks like. It's not about shame or punishment, it's about growth and change. Each of you has a choice to make about your role in this transformation. As the meeting concluded, crew members filed out with much to consider. Bradley Parker lingered, approaching Jasmine hesitantly. "Ms. Taylor," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I want you to know. I never thought of myself as prejudiced. I have black friends, I even—" Jasmine raised a hand, stopping him. "Mr. Parker, that's exactly the kind of thinking you'll need to move beyond if you choose the restorative justice path. Racism isn't always about conscious hatred. Often it's about unconscious assumptions and split-second decisions that we don't even recognize as biased." Bradley nodded slowly. "I'd like to take the second chance, if you're serious about offering it." "The program starts Monday," Jasmine replied. "It won't be easy. Neither is facing the truth about yourself," he admitted. "But I think it's time I did." As Bradley left, Darius approached Jasmine. "That was unexpected. Do you really think he can change?" Jasmine watched the door close behind the flight attendant. "I don't know. But I do know that firing him would be easier than giving him a path to redemption. Easy solutions rarely create lasting change." Speaking of change, Zoe interjected, checking her tablet, "The press has gotten wind of something happening with Deluxe Air. Social media is starting to buzz about Flight 427. "It was inevitable," Jasmine nodded. "Let's get ahead of it. Prepare a statement about our commitment to transformation, but keep the specific incident vague for now. This isn't about me becoming the face of corporate discrimination, it's about fixing a broken system." Later that evening, Jasmine sat alone in her hotel suite, finally allowing herself a moment of quiet reflection. The day had taken an unexpected turn that would alter the trajectory of her newest acquisition, and perhaps the industry itself. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "Baby, are you okay?" Denise Taylor's voice carried decades of maternal concern. "I just saw something on the news about you and an airline." Jasmine smiled, her professional armor melting away. "I'm fine, Mom. It's been quite a day, but I'm okay. They said you were discriminated against. On a flight to come see me?" "Yes, but," Jasmine began. "And they didn't know who you were." Her mother's voice held a mixture of indignation and pride. "That's the point, Mom," Jasmine said softly. "Nobody should be treated that way, regardless of who they are." A moment of silence stretched between them. "You're doing something about it, aren't you?" Denise finally asked. "Just like you always do." "Yes, Mom. I'm doing something about it." "That's my girl," Denise said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father would be so proud." After they hung up, Jasmine walked to the window, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the city below. Throughout her career, she had transformed companies for profit and growth. But this transformation felt different, more personal, more meaningful. Today, she hadn't just been a CEO or an investor. She had been every person who had ever been judged by their skin color rather than their character or credentials. And now she had the power to ensure that others wouldn't face the same treatment. Tomorrow would bring challenges, resistance from those comfortable with the status quo, skepticism from those who'd heard promises of change before, the hard work of transforming a corporate culture. But tonight, Jasmine Taylor allowed herself to feel something rare in her high-pressure world, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, justice does prevail. And sometimes, you get to be the one who delivers it. By dawn the next morning, #DeluxeAirDiscrimination was trending nationwide. Michael Akinola's video, showing Bradley Parker asking Jasmine to move and her dignified refusal, had gone viral overnight, accumulating millions of views and tens of thousands of outraged comments. News vans lined the perimeter of Deluxe Air's corporate headquarters in Atlanta. Major networks had dispatched reporters to cover what was quickly becoming the corporate scandal of the month. The story had all the elements media thrives on: discrimination, power dynamics, and a spectacular reversal of fortune when the victim turned out to be the company's new owner. In the crisis management conference room, Darius Washington monitored 6 screens simultaneously, each showing a different news channel's coverage of the unfolding story. "They're circling like sharks," he told Jasmine, who was reviewing the company-wide memo that would go out to all Deluxe Air employees within the hour. "Every network wants an exclusive with you." Jasmine looked up from her tablet. "And they'll all get the same answer: no interviews at this time. This isn't about me becoming the face of corporate discrimination. It's about systemic change." Anthony Grantham, the legal officer, entered with a stack of reports. "Social media analysis shows public sentiment is overwhelmingly in your favor. 87% of comments support your actions. The hashtag has reached over 50 million impressions." "And the other 13%? Jasmine asked. Anthony shifted uncomfortably. "A mix of skeptics questioning your motives, people defending the airline's right to seat passengers as they see fit, and, well, the usual internet trolls and racists." Jasmine nodded, unsurprised. "Make sure our social media team isn't engaging with the negative comments. We stick to our message: this is about institutional change, not individual grievances." Zoe Bennett arrived next, tablet in hand. "The Wilsons gave an interview," she announced grimly. "That was fast," Darius remarked. "What did they say?" Zoe queued up the video on the main screen. Robert and Patricia Wilson sat stiffly in studio chairs, their expressions a mixture of defensiveness and artificial remorse. "We had no idea who Ms. Taylor was," Robert explained to the interviewer. "We simply asked the flight attendant if we could sit together, which seems like a reasonable request for a married couple." The interviewer, a veteran journalist known for not accepting easy answers, leaned forward. "But according to multiple witnesses, you didn't simply ask to sit together. You specifically accepted seats that were offered by moving another passenger, a black woman, despite her having a valid ticket for that seat." Patricia Wilson interjected, her voice tight. "We didn't ask for her specifically to be moved. The flight attendant made that decision." "And when you realized what was happening, did you decline those seats? Did you speak up?" The uncomfortable silence that followed was damning. "We were just trying to get to our destination," Robert finally said, his tone defensive. "It's not our job to manage the airline's seating policies." Jasmine signaled for Zoe to stop the video. "That's enough. Their statement speaks for itself." "It's already backfiring," Darius noted, checking the real-time social media analytics. "Public sentiment toward them is extremely negative. People are calling out their failure to take any responsibility. Let's focus on our response, not theirs," Jasmine directed. "Where are we with the employee communication plan?" Zoe outlined the comprehensive strategy they had developed overnight. "The company-wide memo goes out in 30 minutes, followed by department head briefings throughout the day. We've arranged for professional facilitators to lead discussion groups at every major hub. The 24-hour grounding gives us time to reach all 12,000 employees with preliminary information." "Good," Jasmine nodded. "And the passenger communication?" "Email going out to all Deluxe Air customers this afternoon," Darius confirmed. "We're being transparent about the incident without naming names, acknowledging the failure, and outlining concrete steps for improvement." Anthony cleared his throat. "There's one more thing you should be aware of. We've had several employees reach out confidentially through the ethics hotline overnight. They're sharing their own experiences of witnessing discrimination at Deluxe Air, not just against passengers, but against fellow employees as well." Jasmine's expression remained calm, but her eyes reflected her determination. "That's actually good news, Anthony. It means people feel empowered to speak up. Make sure every report is properly documented and investigated." As the meeting concluded, Jasmine remained in the conference room, staring thoughtfully at the silent screen still displaying news coverage of the controversy. Darius lingered behind. "Penny, for your thoughts." I'm thinking about my mother, Jasmine admitted. About how many times she must have swallowed her dignity just to get through the day. About all the people who face these indignities without the power to do anything about it. Darius nodded solemnly. That's why this matters beyond one incident or one company. Exactly, Jasmine agreed. And that's why we have to get it right. Throughout the day, the story continued to evolve. Michael Akinola appeared on several news programs, providing his first-hand account as both a witness and a civil rights attorney. What struck me most, he explained to a national audience, wasn't just the discrimination itself, sadly, that's all too common. It was Ms. Taylor's dignity in the face of it, and then her response afterward. She could have simply fired everyone involved and moved on. Instead, she's using this as a catalyst for meaningful change. Harriet Johnson, the retired history professor who had been on the flight, also became an unexpected media figure. Her eloquent perspectives on how discrimination in travel had evolved, yet persisted, over 6 decades resonated deeply with viewers. I was born before the Civil Rights Act, she explained during one interview. I've been asked to move to the back of buses, denied service at restaurants, and yes, treated differently on flights. What happened to Ms. Taylor wasn't new, what's new is the power she has to address it systematically. By mid-afternoon, other passengers from Flight 427 had begun sharing their stories. A South Asian doctor described how she'd been repeatedly mistaken for a flight attendant despite her first-class ticket. A Latino executive detailed being questioned about his seat assignment while white passengers boarded without scrutiny. The collective testimonies painted a picture not of isolated incidents, but of a pervasive problem that affected countless travelers based solely on their appearance. Captain Thomas Reynolds, to the surprise of many, requested permission to make a public statement. After consulting with the legal team, Jasmine approved his request, curious about what he would say. Standing before reporters, still in his pilot's uniform but without his captain's hat, Reynolds spoke with visible emotion. As the captain of Flight 427, I failed in my duty to ensure all passengers were treated with dignity and respect, he began. I made assumptions without sufficient information. I listened to one voice while silencing another. Those were my choices, and I take full responsibility for them. He paused, gathering himself. In 20 years of flying, I've prided myself on safety and professionalism. But yesterday showed me that professionalism must include fairness and equal treatment for every passenger. I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn from this mistake and to be part of the solution going forward. His raw honesty earned grudging respect from many observers. More importantly, it set a tone of accountability that resonated throughout the company. By evening, Bradley Parker had also made a decision. After hours of soul-searching, he had accepted Jasmine's offer of the restorative justice program rather than termination. His journey would be longer and harder than a simple firing, requiring him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself and his actions. As night fell, Jasmine finally left the crisis center to return to her hotel. Tomorrow, she would meet with the full Deluxe Air board to outline her vision for transformation. Tonight, she needed rest and perspective. In her suite, she found a handwritten note had been delivered. Opening it, she recognized Harriet Johnson's elegant script. Ms. Taylor, asterisk. Today, you did something remarkable. Not just for yourself, but for every person who has ever been made to feel less than, because of how they look, asterisk. When I was a young professor in the 1970s, I once wrote a paper about how true change happens. I concluded that it requires 3 elements: the moral authority of the oppressed, the awakening of the privileged, and the transformation of institutions, asterisk. Today, I witnessed all 3. Keep going. History is watching, and so am I, asterisk. With respect and gratitude, asterisk. Harriet Johnson, Ph.D. Asterisk. Jasmine carefully folded the note and placed it in her journal. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, resistance from those comfortable with the status quo, and the hard work of transforming a corporate culture. But tonight, she allowed herself to feel the weight of what had been accomplished in just 24 hours, a moment of humiliation transformed into a movement for change. One incident exposed to light. One company beginning the journey toward justice. It wasn't enough. It could never be enough, but it was a start. And sometimes, that's all you need to change the world, a single moment, a clear choice, and the courage to act. 1 week after the incident on Flight 427, Jasmine Taylor stood before 500 Deluxe Air managers gathered in the company's Atlanta training center. The room hummed with nervous energy, a mixture of anticipation, resistance, and cautious hope. "I understand that this past week has been challenging," Jasmine began, her voice steady and clear. "Change always is. But I want to start by thanking each of you for your openness to this process." Behind her, a large screen displayed the new vision statement that would guide the company forward, Deluxe Air, where every person is treated with equal dignity, respect, and care, no exceptions. "This isn't just a PR exercise," Jasmine continued. "This is a fundamental reimagining of who we are as a company and how we operate. The incident that brought us to this moment was painful, but it exposed problems that have existed for years." She walked across the stage, making eye contact with different sections of the audience. "Some of you have asked why such dramatic changes are necessary based on one incident. The answer is simple: it wasn't one incident." With a nod to Zoe Bennett, who stood at the side of the stage, the screen behind Jasmine changed to display a sobering set of statistics: hundreds of complaints about discriminatory treatment filed by passengers over the past 5 years, dozens of internal reports of bias in hiring and promotion, and survey data showing that employees of color experience the workplace very differently than their white colleagues. "These numbers tell a story," Jasmine explained. "Not of individual bad actors, but of systemic problems that require systemic solutions. And that's exactly what we're implementing starting today." Over the next hour, Jasmine and her leadership team outlined the comprehensive changes coming to Deluxe Air. First, a new diversity, equity, and inclusion division would be established with executive-level leadership and significant resources. This wasn't a symbolic gesture; the department would have real authority to review policies, investigate complaints, and hold people accountable. Second, all employees would participate in comprehensive bias training led by experts in the field. This wouldn't be the typical corporate checkbox exercise, but an ongoing program designed to create lasting change in behaviors and attitudes. Third, new reporting systems would be implemented to make it safe for both employees and passengers to report concerns without fear of retaliation. These systems would include anonymous options and robust follow-up protocols. Fourth, hiring and promotion practices would be overhauled to eliminate bias and ensure that Deluxe Air's workforce, especially in leadership positions, reflected the diversity of the communities it served. Finally, a passenger Bill of Rights would be prominently displayed on every aircraft and at every gate, making clear the company's commitment to equal treatment and providing clear recourse for any violations. "Some of you are probably wondering about the financial impact of these changes," Jasmine acknowledged. "It's a fair question. The truth is, discrimination is already costing this company millions, in lost customers, legal settlements, and damaged reputation. Doing the right thing isn't just morally correct, it's good business." As the presentation concluded, Jasmine opened the floor for questions. The first came from a middle-aged white man in a pilot's uniform. "Ms. Taylor, with all due respect, isn't this an overreaction? Most of us treat everyone fairly already." Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate your question, Captain. The challenge with bias is that it often operates below our conscious awareness. We don't see it in ourselves. That's why we need systems and training to help us recognize and address it." Another hand went up, a young black woman who worked in customer service. "Ms. Taylor, we've heard promises before. How will this time be different?" "A valid concern," Jasmine acknowledged. "The difference is accountability. These aren't aspirational goals, they're measurable commitments with real consequences for failure. My company didn't invest in Deluxe Air to watch it continue making the same mistakes. Questions continued for another hour, some supportive, some skeptical, some openly resistant. Jasmine answered each with respect and clarity, neither sugarcoating the challenges ahead nor backing down from her vision. As the session ended, Zoe Bennett approached Jasmine. "That went better than expected. But there's still a lot of resistance, especially among longer-tenured employees." "We didn't expect to change everyone's mind in one day," Jasmine replied. "This is a marathon, not a sprint." "Speaking of unexpected allies," Zoe said, lowering her voice, "Bradley Parker has been surprisingly engaged in the restorative justice program. The facilitator says he's doing the real work, not just going through the motions." Jasmine nodded, pleased but cautious. "That's good to hear. Real change happens one person at a time, alongside the institutional reforms." Later that afternoon, Jasmine met with Michael Akinola, who had agreed to join Deluxair's new advisory council on passenger rights. His legal expertise and personal experience made him an invaluable resource. "The training program you've outlined is impressive," Michael noted, reviewing the materials. "But the real test will be implementation and consistency." "Agreed," Jasmine said. "That's why we're building accountability at every level, from frontline employees to the boardroom." Michael studied her for a moment. "May I ask a personal question? How are you processing what happened to you?" Behind the CEO title and the corporate response, there's a person who experienced something painful. Jasmine's professional facade softened slightly. "Honestly? It hurt. It always hurts, no matter how many times you experience it, no matter how successful you become." She gazed out the window at aircraft taking off and landing in the distance. "But I've learned to channel that hurt into determination. Each time it happens, I remember why the work matters." That evening, Jasmine met privately with Darius in her office. With the day's public events behind them, she could finally drop the unshakable confidence she projected to others. "It's a lot, Darius," she admitted, massaging her temples. "The resistance is stronger than I expected, especially from people who consider themselves colorblind and don't understand why change is necessary." Darius nodded sympathetically. "They've never had to think about race the way we do, as something that shapes every interaction, every day." "Exactly. And now we're asking them not just to think about it, but to change behaviors they don't even recognize as problematic." She sighed. "Some days I wonder if it's possible to truly transform a culture this entrenched." "If anyone can do it, you can," Darius said with quiet confidence. "Remember Westfield Technologies? Everyone said that company was too far gone, but you turned it around." "This is different," Jasmine replied. "Financial problems are straightforward compared to changing hearts and minds." "True," Darius acknowledged. "But you have something you didn't have before, a personal stake in the outcome. This isn't just another acquisition, it's a mission." Jasmine smiled slightly. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," he replied with a grin. As weeks turned into months, the transformation of Deluxair continued, though not without challenges. Some long-time employees resigned rather than adapt to the new expectations. Others embraced the changes with surprising enthusiasm, often those who had silently witnessed discrimination but felt powerless to address it before. Zoe Bennett emerged as an unexpected champion of the new vision. Her operational expertise combined with genuine commitment to equity made her invaluable in implementing changes that worked in the real world of commercial aviation. The restorative justice program that Bradley Parker had entered proved more successful than many had anticipated. After 3 months of intensive work, including listening sessions with passengers who had experienced discrimination, education about the historical context of racism in transportation, and deep personal reflection, he had emerged as a changed man. "I can't undo what I did," he told Jasmine during their first meeting after his completion of the program. "But I can help prevent others from making the same mistakes. If you'll let me, I'd like to be part of the training team, sharing my experience as a cautionary tale." Jasmine studied him carefully, looking for signs of insincerity. Finding none, she nodded. We'll start you with the new higher orientation program. Your perspective could be valuable, especially the journey from resistance to understanding. Perhaps most surprisingly, Captain Thomas Reynolds had become an advocate for change within the pilot ranks, a group traditionally resistant to corporate initiatives they viewed as outside their domain of expertise. Safety has always been our priority, he explained to his fellow pilots during a training session. But we've defined it too narrowly. A truly safe aircraft is one where every passenger feels secure, not just from mechanical failures, but from discrimination and mistreatment. 6 months after the incident on Flight 427, Jasmine stood at a podium in the company's headquarters lobby, ready to make a major announcement. Cameras from major networks captured the moment as she unveiled a new logo and name. Today marks not just a rebranding, but a recommitment to our core values, Jasmine announced. Deluxe Air will now become Horizon Air, a name that reflects our vision of a limitless future where every passenger is treated with equal dignity and respect. The sleek new logo behind her featured a stylized horizon line in blue and gold, colors chosen to represent trust and excellence. But more important than the visual changes were the structural ones. This isn't just a new coat of paint, Jasmine emphasized. It's a fundamental transformation. Over the past 6 months, every employee has participated in comprehensive training. We've overhauled our hiring practices, promotion criteria, and customer service protocols. We've established clear accountability measures at every level of the organization. The press conference continued with detailed explanations of the changes implemented and results already observed, a significant decrease in passenger complaints, improved employee satisfaction across all demographic groups, and a corporate culture that was beginning to truly value diversity as a strength rather than a checkbox exercise. As journalists asked questions, Jasmine was candid about both progress and challenges. We haven't solved everything overnight, she acknowledged. This is ongoing work. But we're committed to the journey. When asked about the infamous Flight 427 incident that had catalyzed these changes, Jasmine responded with characteristic poise. What happened that day was unfortunate but not unique. What makes it significant is that it became a turning point, not just for one company, but hopefully for an industry. After the press conference, Jasmine met with her core transformation team. Darius, Zoe, and several new executives who have been brought on to help lead the change. 6 months down, Darius said with a satisfied smile. The press response is overwhelmingly positive. Even our most skeptical investors are starting to see the business case for this transformation. The employee metrics are even more encouraging, Zoe added. Retention is up, especially among women and people of color. The anonymous feedback surveys show real improvement in workplace culture. Jasmine nodded, pleased but not complacent. We've made a good start, but we can't get comfortable. Real change takes consistent effort over time. As the meeting concluded, her assistant appeared at the door. Ms. Taylor? There's someone here to see you. The Wilsons. A ripple of surprise went through the room. The Wilsons had become reluctant symbols of privileged entitlement after their tone-deaf television interview. They had disappeared from public view shortly thereafter. Send them in, Jasmine decided after a moment's consideration. Robert and Patricia Wilson entered hesitantly, notably less confident than they had appeared on Flight 427 6 months earlier. Ms. Taylor, Robert began, his voice subdued. Thank you for seeing us. We wanted to apologize in person for our role in what happened. Patricia nodded. After all the media coverage, we started to really examine our behavior, not just on that flight, but throughout our lives. It's been uncomfortable, but necessary. We realized we've benefited from privileges we never acknowledged, Robert continued. We've never had to wonder if we belong somewhere, never had to prove our right to occupy space. Jasmine studied them, looking for authenticity behind the words. What prompted this realization? The Wilsons exchanged glances. Our daughter, Patricia admitted. After the incident went viral, she called us, devastated by our behavior. She's been educating us, sending us books, articles, making us really see patterns we've been blind to our whole lives. It's not your job to absolve us, Robert added quickly. We just wanted you to know that what happened that day has changed us. We're trying to be better. Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. I appreciate you coming here today. Real change begins with self-awareness. It sounds like you've taken the first steps on that journey. After they left, Darius raised an eyebrow. Did you believe them? I believe they're uncomfortable with how they've been perceived, Jasmine replied carefully. Whether that discomfort leads to lasting change remains to be seen. But their discomfort itself is progress. It means they're at least questioning assumptions they never examined before. The transformation of Horizon Air continued to gain momentum in the following months. The company became known not just for its stand against discrimination, but for exceptional service that truly valued every passenger. Employee morale soared as people felt genuine pride in being part of a corporate culture with clear values and accountability. Industry publications that had initially dismissed the rebranding as a PR stunt began to acknowledge the substantive changes taking place. Other airlines, noting Horizon's improving market share and customer loyalty, began implementing their own diversity initiatives, though few approached the depth and sincerity of Jasmine's vision. Perhaps most significantly, Jasmine established the Horizon Foundation, dedicated to helping minority entrepreneurs overcome systemic barriers in business. Using her own success story as inspiration, the foundation provided mentorship, funding, and network access to promising businesses led by people from underrepresented groups. The goal isn't just to help individuals succeed, she explained at the foundation's launch. It's to change the landscape so that success is equally accessible to everyone with talent and determination. For all the public accolades and business success, however, Jasmine found the most meaningful validation in quieter moments, the grateful email from a black teenager who had flown without being questioned about her first-class ticket, the flight attendant who shared how empowered she now felt to intervene when she witnessed discrimination, the steady increase in diversity among new hires at every level of the company. These were the real measures of transformation, not press releases or profit margins, but human experiences improved one interaction at a time. 6 months after the rebranding, Jasmine Taylor boarded a Horizon Air flight from New York to Atlanta. It was the same route as Flight 427, and she had deliberately booked the same seat, 2A. As she settled in, she couldn't help but reflect on the contrast between this experience and the last. The flight attendant who greeted her, a young South Asian woman named Priya, showed the same warm professionalism she offered to every passenger. No double-checking of her boarding pass, no implied questioning of whether she belonged in first class. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Taylor," Priya said with a genuine smile. "It's an honor to have you flying with us today." The other passengers boarding recognized her too. Her face had been in the news often enough during the past year. Some nodded respectfully, others simply went about their business. But there was none of the tension or unspoken bias that had characterized her last flight on this route. As the aircraft prepared for departure, Captain Sarah Johnson's voice came over the intercom. "Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome aboard Horizon Air Flight 217 to Atlanta. Before we take off, I want to remind you of our commitment to making this journey comfortable and respectful for every passenger. If there's anything we can do to improve your experience, please don't hesitate to let our cabin crew know." The simple addition to the standard announcement, now part of every Horizon Air flight, served as a subtle reminder of the company's values and expectations. Once they reached cruising altitude, Jasmine opened her laptop to review some documents, but found her mind wandering to the real purpose of this trip, her mother's birthday celebration, postponed from the year before. So much had changed in 12 months. What had begun as a humiliating incident had transformed into a catalyst for meaningful change, not just for one company, but potentially for an industry. The ripple effects continued to spread as other airlines began examining their own practices and policies. Bradley Parker, who had completed his restorative justice program, now worked as part of Horizon's training team, sharing his journey from unconscious bias to awareness with new employees. His story was powerful precisely because it wasn't about performative redemption, but about the hard, ongoing work of changing deeply ingrained patterns of thought. Captain Thomas Reynolds had become an advocate for culture change within the pilot community, challenging his colleagues to expand their definition of safety to include equitable treatment for all passengers. The Wilsons, after their initial apology, had taken steps to educate themselves further. Robert had joined the board of a nonprofit focused on racial equity in his hometown, while Patricia had started a reading group to help other privileged people understand systemic racism. As for Jasmine herself, the experience had deepened her commitment to using her position and resources to create structural change. The success of Horizon Air's transformation had proven that corporate culture could evolve when leadership demonstrated genuine commitment backed by accountability. When the flight landed in Atlanta, Jasmine found Darius waiting at the gate. "Surprise," he grinned. "I thought you might want some moral support for the big family reunion." "You didn't need to come all this way," Jasmine protested, though she was clearly pleased. "Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss Mama Taylor's legendary birthday spread for anything. Besides, someone needs to make sure you actually relax for once." As they walked through the terminal, Jasmine noticed a young black girl, perhaps 10 years old, watching her with wide-eyed recognition. The girl's mother bent down to whisper something in her ear, and the child approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, Miss Taylor," she said, her voice small but determined. "My mom says you're the lady who made it so people like us get treated fairly on airplanes." Jasmine knelt to the child's level. "What's your name?" "Zora," the girl replied. "Well, Zora, I'm working on it. A lot of people are working on it. And someday, when you're older, maybe you'll help too." Zora nodded solemnly. "I want to be a pilot. Or maybe own an airline like you. Either way, I bet you'll be amazing," Jasmine smiled. "Just remember that the most important thing isn't the job title, it's making sure everyone gets treated with dignity and respect." As they continued toward the exit, Darius gave her a knowing look. "That's what this has all been about, hasn't it? Not just fixing one company, but changing expectations for the next generation." "Exactly," Jasmine nodded. "Success isn't just about what we achieve for ourselves. It's about making sure others don't have to face the same barriers we did." At her mother's home, surrounded by family and old friends, Jasmine finally shared the full story of what had happened on Flight 427 and everything that followed. She had protected her mother from the worst details during the media frenzy, not wanting to cause her pain. "I knew something big was happening," Denise said, shaking her head. "But I had no idea it started with them trying to move you from your seat." "It wasn't really about the seat, Mom," Jasmine explained. "It was about dignity. About being seen as a person deserving of respect, regardless of how I look." Her Aunt Vivian, never one to mince words, snorted. "Bet they nearly died when they found out who you were." "That's not the point either," Jasmine said gently. "They should have treated me with respect whether I was a CEO or a teacher or unemployed. That's what the whole transformation has been about, creating systems where people are treated with equal dignity, period." Later, as the celebration wound down, Denise pulled her daughter aside. "Your father would be so proud of you, baby. Not just for your success, but for how you've used it to make things better for others." Jasmine felt tears threatening, a rare crack in her usual composure. "I learned that from you, Mom. You always taught me that real success means lifting others as you climb." The next morning, Jasmine visited Horizon Air's Atlanta Operations Center, where she met with the local leadership team. The changes implemented over the past year were evident not just in policy documents, but in the diverse faces around the conference table and the candid discussion of ongoing challenges. "We've made real progress," reported Regional Director James Carter. "Employee satisfaction is up across all demographic groups. Customer complaints about discriminatory treatment are down 84%. But we're not declaring victory, this is ongoing work." Jasmine nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the right mindset. Sustainable change requires constant vigilance and improvement. After the meeting, she took a detour to the crew training center, where a new class of flight attendants was graduating from their initial training. Bradley Parker was there, now serving as a special instructor for the cultural competence portion of the curriculum. She watched from the back of the room as he addressed the diverse group of trainees. "The most important thing I've learned," he told them, "is that good intentions aren't enough. I never thought of myself as prejudiced, but I made assumptions based on appearance that hurt people and violated their dignity. Your job is not just to serve drinks and demonstrate safety features, it's to create an environment where every passenger feels equally valued and respected." His humility and evident commitment to change were powerful precisely because they came from someone who had been on the other side of the equation. As Jasmine prepared to leave, Bradley noticed her and approached hesitantly. "Ms. Taylor," he began. "I didn't know you would be here today. I wanted to see the training program in action," she explained. "You're doing good work, Mr. Parker." He nodded, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his face. "I can never undo what happened that day. But I can help make sure it doesn't happen to someone else." "That's all any of us can do," Jasmine replied. "Learn, improve, and work toward a better future." On her return flight to New York, Jasmine found herself seated next to a young white couple traveling with their infant daughter. The mother struggled to settle the fussy baby while the father arranged their belongings in the overhead compartment. "Would you like me to hold her for a moment?" Jasmine offered. The mother looked relieved. "Would you? That would be so helpful." As Jasmine cradled the baby, who immediately calmed in her arms, she reflected on how simple human kindness transcended all the categories society used to divide people. This small moment of connection, one person helping another, was ultimately what all the policy changes and training programs were designed to protect and promote. When the flight attendant came to check their seat belts, she treated each passenger with the same professional courtesy, not because they were being watched or because of special circumstances, but because equal respect had become the new normal. And that, Jasmine realized, was perhaps the most meaningful victory of all, not just changing rules or procedures, but shifting the baseline of what people expected from each other. Creating a world where dignity wasn't a privilege for some but a right for all. As the aircraft soared above the clouds, Jasmine gazed out the window at the vast horizon stretching before them. The view reminded her of the company's new name and the promise it represented, not just for one airline, but for society itself. A horizon of possibility where everyone could be seen, respected, and valued for who they were, not judged by how they looked. It was a vision worth fighting for, one interaction, one policy, one transformation at a time. This powerful story teaches us that true change requires both personal courage and institutional power. Jasmine could have simply fired those who discriminated against her and moved on, but she recognized the opportunity to transform an entire system. Real leadership isn't about retribution but about creating lasting positive change. The story also reminds us that discrimination often operates through unconscious bias rather than overt hatred. Bradley didn't see himself as racist, yet his actions revealed deeply ingrained assumptions about who belongs in certain spaces. Meaningful change requires honest self-examination and willingness to acknowledge uncomfortable truths. Perhaps most importantly, this narrative shows that one person's dignity matters, regardless of their status. Jasmine emphasized that she deserved respect whether she was a CEO or not, that equal treatment isn't a privilege for the powerful but a right for everyone. When we witness discrimination, staying silent makes us complicit. Michael and Harriet demonstrated that speaking up, even as bystanders, can help shift the power dynamics in unjust situations. Finally, the story illustrates that transformation is a journey, not a destination. Even after substantial progress, Jasmine acknowledged the need for ongoing vigilance and improvement. Creating a more just world requires sustained commitment, not just momentary outrage or symbolic gestures. What moments in your life have you witnessed discrimination and wished you had spoken up? Have you ever been in a position to create meaningful change in your workplace or community? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, Please hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful narratives about overcoming injustice and creating positive change. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all have the power to transform moments of injustice into catalysts for meaningful change.